Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 12th, 2024 Greytown Council meeting. This meeting will be held in person and online with a link provided in the agenda header. For public hearings, residents can click in to participate or call using the number provided during the public hearings as detailed in the agenda. We'll start with roll call. Ann?
Present.
Krista?
Present.
Michael?
Present.
I am also present, and by the end of the evening, we'll have a full house. If you'll all stand with me to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a couple of we have two changes in the agenda. We will be removing let's see, Resolve 2425-14, appointing Valerie Raza to the Open Space Committee. It turns out Valerie's appointment ends next year, so we were going to reappoint her earlier than we have to. And though it's not on the agenda, it was on the website that we would be swearing in the candidate that we select tonight, but that won't happen. That person, whoever we select, will be sworn in, and their first meeting will be our first meeting in December. Are there any other changes to the agenda? All right. Seeing none, I'll take a motion for the approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes?
I just had one
Okay.
suggested edit. On packet page 5, where we had a presentation from Dan Coy of United Way of Southern Maine.
Yes.
It would just be nice to have just a brief explanation about the items he discussed. I know we're not having a transcript, but I don't think many people would know what Allison, Maine is. And, it would just be nice to have a brief explanation there.
Okay.
That's all for me.
Hearing no other changes or additions, we'll go to a vote. Ann?
Yes.
Krista?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. The next item on our agenda is council communications. We'll start with report from the chair. I just have a couple of things for this. The town council did hold our retreat on the 29th, October 29th. The feedback I've heard has been, was very positive from everybody, I think, who was there, was participated. I think it's important to let people know, especially folks that may not have heard about it, that it wasn't so much an effort on the council's part to create any new goals or to really change what we've already got started, but it was more to hone in on the most important things, to make sure we were doing the most important things first. So I think that's important to think, because we have the comp plan. We have a lot of irons in the fire as it is, so we weren't looking to create a lot of new plans or projects. I'd also like to thank Britt, the town staff, and all the volunteers for running such a smooth election. I think a lot of people had to wait a lot longer in other polling districts than ours, and that's a feather in their cap for all that hard work. I think everybody in town appreciated that. That's all I have for my report. We'll go on to council correspondence and committee reports. Mike, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I go back. I don't get a ton of correspondence, as most of you know. I think the only thing I got were just the ones that all of us have, have been on, and the committees have been light over the last few weeks. So nothing to report.
Okay, Krista?
I don't have any correspondence to report outside of just regular committee duties and council correspondence. For committee reports, the Ordinance Advisory Committee met on October 21st, and we're just continuing to assess and look at the new zoning map that aligns with the comprehensive plan, and just having discussions on how best to do outreach around that. In particular, we're hoping to reconvene the committees that we had a workshop with. I don't know how long, when was that? It was May, I think, that we had that workshop. And then also just targeted outreach in addition to just a broad communication, potentially mailers to the community, just to let them know that this new zoning map is being drafted. The Blueberry Festival Committee hasn't met again since our last meeting, and GPCOG Executive Committee is scheduled to meet next week on November 19th. That's all I have.
Okay. Ian?
Yeah, the Resiliency Committee met, and at our last meeting, we had GPCOG staff come and present to us about a new community action grant opportunity that they're spearheading that would create a town-wide vulnerability assessment. And they're working with 5 towns actually now to, that grant has been submitted to the state, and the Resiliency Committee was interested in participating and said, go ahead, and as did the town manager. And so anyway, that's underway. We also, at our last meeting, started reviewing the phosphorus ordinance that Wyndham is using, and that'll take us another meeting or 2 to get through entirely. I should also let you know the town has been approved a 0.5 FTE resiliency fellow, or resilience fellow, again provided by GPCOG, who will start in January. So we're excited about that, and that person will help us implement the community action grant that we've already been awarded. The Community Television Advisory Committee did not meet due to our shift to quarterly meetings. But Mary Sweeney Underwood is out there doing her thing with videos. She's amazing, and she's doing a video on the Community Connector program, Great Urgent Care, and on a program for homeschoolers and how to use the library. So thanks to Mary for that. The Village Transformation Project, we met with all 3 state legislators. They came in and we had a face-to-face meeting with them to present to them the latest and greatest design for the VTP, and had a great discussion with them, and so they're on board with that. I thought it was a very productive meeting. So Michael did a terrific job presenting, and so we're excited to find out what our next steps are there. The VTP meets again tomorrow.
Thank you. For correspondence, I received several emails and calls with regards to the town council replacement process and how that was going to work. I received a couple of emails from the Gray Water District with information about concerning the residential solar ordinance we'll be discussing later tonight, with requests on their part to make changes to protect the wellhead, which I forwarded to the council and to the town manager. I was copied on an email from Planning Board Chair Darren Cobb, which had some questions about the Gracewood Lane subdivision. I received an email from the Deer Acres Association about their meeting with the town's consulting engineer to go over road construction standards. And I received an email from Lacey Antonson about the comp plan coordinator position, and we will discuss some of those changes as we move forward. And I was also copied on a couple of emails regarding questions about the election. For committees, the planning board's next meeting is November 14th. A new subdivision plan on Campbell Shore Road, and a final plan review for the Mayall Mills subdivision on Mayall Road. The Zoning Board of Appeals meets on November 20th, and they will hear an appeal for practical difficulty variance with regards to setbacks in the lake zone. And that's all I have for correspondence and committees. Moving on now from a report from the town manager.
Thank you. I'll be brief since we have a number of items on the agenda this evening, but a number of department reports were included in the packet. If anyone has any specific questions about any of those reports, feel free to reach out to me directly. Our department heads are doing a lot of work on a regular basis. But it was a very busy month with the election, as everyone had pointed out. We had a lot of voters participate in the election. Our town clerk, the deputy clerk, and the clerk's office did an outstanding job to organize the election in an efficient process that allowed everybody to flow through pretty easily. We had a major line at the beginning of the day and a major line to register to vote towards the end of the evening, but rest of the time people really were able to come in and vote pretty easily. Some data that the clerk provided to me, we had 5,650 residents participate in this year's presidential election and 24 non-staff volunteers. We did have a lot of our staff participate as an all hands on deck given the large election. There was 2,742 people that actually voted on election day, 2,908 absentee voters, and the registrars completed 362 new or changes to voter registrations on that day. So there was a lot of voter registration that took place. And just in contrast, in 2020, the presidential election had 5,449 voters, an increase of about 201 voters. And we're still waiting for the state to finalize participation percentages with all the voter registration updates. So we'll have that data at some point. But that's all I had for today. Oh, just quickly to add to the VTP, we'll be as we talked about when we had the last workshop, we'll be bringing forth a resolution either at our next meeting or the later meeting in December with the finalized plan that we had presented that night that the council supported to basically give Maine DOT the green light to work with us on applying for federal grants for that project. So we'll bring that draft, or we'll bring forth that resolution at an upcoming meeting. That's all I had. Thank you.
Very good. The next part of our agenda is public comments on non-agenda items. The public is invited to address the council on any item of business that is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Citizens have the right and are encouraged to speak during public comment regarding items that are not on the agenda. Comments and questions during public comment or the agenda items, are limited to not more than 3 minutes per speaker, except that the chair may grant an additional 3 minutes. And if someone would like to make comments beyond those 3 minutes, they can stay to the end of this meeting and the council will take it up again at the end of our meeting. Is there anyone tonight that has any comments on items that are not on our agenda? Please come to the microphone. State your name and address, please.
45 Gray Road, Lake Avenue. So I was at the July 11th Planning Board meeting about the medical cannabis shops, and I was against it. And I spoke on behalf of what I had seen on Facebook, and I shared with Mike Foley that in September 22nd of 2022, a person said, what type of businesses would you like to see the gray? And we have our new economic development person here, so maybe she'd like to hear this as well. There were 161 answers, and most of them were restaurants, and we've heard from town council and other people saying that it's hard to run a restaurant, so we get that. Even though we want that, we get that. They wanted gyms and swimming pools and tennis courts and things like that. But when someone said, as a post, one of the 161 posts, no weed stores, with like 5 exclamation marks, 48 people did thumbs up and smiley faces. So for 48 people to agree with a post, response to a post, I think that's a lot. That's a lot. So I shared that with Mike Foley. So when I spoke up at this town council meeting on August 20th, I was speaking personally that I was against it. I was against seeing cannabis shops for medical in our town. I didn't think that was the public opinion that we wanted. And then Ann and both Chris had said at the June meeting, and Ann said it again at the August meeting, that the majority of people in Gray wanted marijuana to come into our town. And so I think Ann was referencing the November 2016 referendum questions, and there were 6 questions on the ballot. Number 1 was, do you want possession, use, cultivation, manufacture, distribution, testing, and sale in your town. And of the 4,931 voters who voted on all those questions that day, question 1 did get a majority by 42 votes. No, by 63 votes. But when you say majority people wanted this in their town, maybe they wanted possession, not sale. So you can't say a majority wants shops in our town. So when you said majority, I was like, because I was of the minority that said no. There were 3 questions asked of the voters, and the majority voted for question 3, no, we don't want background checks for firearms if we're selling as a non-registered arms dealer. Then question 6 got the next most amount of votes, 592 differential on question 6 about giving a bond for transportation of bridges and shipping ports and things like that. Question 2 got the next amount of majority voters, and it was no, saying we don't want a 3% tax on incomes of $200,000. So really, the majority of people wanted other things, and it was more like a tie. So when I hear again someone saying that the majority of Gray residents at that time in 2016, which is now 8 years ago, wanted marijuana to be in their town, maybe they wanted to smoke it. I don't think they wanted to have it being purchased and sold at shops in our town, like other towns that we make fun of, those of us that are against it. And so my other concern tonight is that at that August 20th meeting, 2 people over there on the town council made a motion and a second, and they dropped it. Then they made another motion and dropped, seconded and dropped it, because of what they were hearing from the town council on this side. But Krista wasn't there. So on her behalf, Mike Foley spoke, and my gut was that Mike Foley overspoke as a town manager on behalf of Krista. So I might be wrong, but I might not be wrong. So I want to caution, like, did Mike overspeak in that issue of voting in the medical cannabis shops? And then for those 3 of you that were on this side, your gut was telling you, let's not, or let's hold back, or let's rethink about it, and I felt like you caved. And I think you let the 2,413 of us down. So just be cautious when your gut is telling you something. Just take 2 more weeks to the next meeting to think about it. There's no rush. Because now, like someone said, once that's approved, we can't get rid of it, say, I'm sorry, we let you open your store and now we don't want you to be in our town. We can't take it back. So we all have regrets, and I hope that we take our more time in making decisions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that has a comment for? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Derek Shirley. I just want to offer the town, no matter what the results are, if you go to my website, gettinghighwithcats.com, I actually run surveys about cannabis and non-cannabis people. So if the town is ever interested in an actual survey up to date, I have no problem doing that. Ready? Free of charge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that has any comments on items that are not on our agenda? All right. Seeing none, we will move on. The next item is old business or unfinished business. Resolve 425-12, appointing one of the interviewed candidates as interim town councilor. The motion is be resolved that the Gray Town Council hereby appoints one of the interviewed candidates as interim town councilor to fill the term of the position which became vacant on September 12, 2024, until the next annual municipal election to be held on June 10th, 2025, and shall serve until a successor is elected to fill the unexpired term. A motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion Ann, second Krista. For those that weren't either here earlier or are just tuning in now, during the workshop, we had the opportunity to interview all of the candidates, the 5 candidates for tonight's position. Which I think was the first time we've really done it this way, and I think it worked out very well. So I appreciate everyone's participation. And I think I'll open the floor to discussion now as to anyone who would like to make a comment.
I'll just reiterate what I said at the end of the workshop, just thanking all 5 applicants for their interest and their time tonight. We certainly, can't choose all of you, so we have to pick one, but we just hope you remain interested and involved in the community.
Again, thank you all. It is a huge opportunity for all of you. I appreciate the fact that you all are willing to give up parts of your personal life to be here. It is something that I think is an honor to be on a board like this. I feel that any one of you would do a good job. I think some have, there's a few people that are on boards already. I hate to lose those people on the boards already. And I think there are some people that have really stepped up and have made an effort to be at some extra meetings and things like that and done a lot of research. So I really appreciate everybody taking the opportunity to at least apply and be here for us.
Yeah, I will second that. As I said earlier this evening, we can only pick one candidate. For some people, it's an uncomfortable conversation when you're having a very public conversation, as we must, when talking about people's skills and abilities or the presentations that they made tonight. To each of you, I would just say that this discussion is our responsibility to pick who we think is the best person going forward. That's not in any way, shape, or form diminishing any of the 4 of you that aren't chosen tonight. And the fact that we have 5 candidates, as other people have said, there are plenty of ways to help the town. Being a town councilor is only one of them. And sometimes I think maybe not the most important one. So for specifics, is there any one candidate that somebody wants to talk about first?
How would you, do you want to go one by one?
We can just go, we can go one, yeah, that's the way you want to do it? We can just go down through the list, or does someone have a candidate that they want to put forward? I don't mind going down through the whole list. I think one of the reasons why we created the process this way is, in the past when we've done it, we've been quick to make a selection and not really have a conversation about the others. And I think one of the things I think we all wanted to do was make everyone feel like they had a fair opportunity to make their impression on us. So yeah, so we can start. We can go to the beginning and start with Mr. Robinson.
Just going back up to his.
Yeah. I usually go last, but I can go first. Do you want me to break the ice?
Sure, go right ahead.
I was struck by Mr. Robinson's sincerity. Clearly, Mr. Robinson, you were a little nervous making that pitch about yourself. I still get nervous sitting here today, so that doesn't necessarily go away. And that's not a fault or flaw in any way, shape, or form. I think clearly you bring a very strong financial background, and I think you presented that well. I think, to be quite honest, one of my concerns is that the finances, though it is one of the most important things that we have to do, it is only one of them. And I think that I had some concern about your experience in other areas compared to some of the other candidates. But I did want to let you know that the sincerity of your presentation came across through your nervousness.
I'll go, yeah. So unfortunately, Levi, I missed most of your presentation. I did read over your resume. I did, I did approach you afterwards to talk to you a little bit. I actually disagree with Dan in the sense that, I think each one of us needs to bring a different piece of the puzzle. So for you having that background, I like, because we could lean on you a little bit more when it comes to that auditor type situation. We could all learn the rest. I think you're young, and whether you get picked today or not, you're going to be a great asset to this community. And I wish you luck.
Yeah,
Krista?
I would just say thank you for your time. I think certainly you would bring some expertise to the council that none of us currently have, and that's a valuable asset. I will just say, to be forthright, I have some concerns that with you having worked at RHR previously, and we just moved on to a different auditing firm here, and I would just have some concerns around that. And also having some experience at the municipal level in the town of Wyndham. I don't know how much of a differentiator that would, not so much a differentiator. I don't know how objective you would be able to be looking at their finances versus our finances, and I would just have some concerns around that. But that's not a knock on your sincerity or your commitment to the town. Those are the concerns I had.
Ann?
I don't have a whole lot to add to that. I mean, I think, again, I think the financial skills are always welcome. We're always in need. I do, think that there are other aspects of serving as a counselor that, other areas of policy or other, process issues that are important as well. So I'm still kind of making up my mind, but I do appreciate the talent that you bring and the skills and knowledge, and certainly if it doesn't work out on the council tonight, there'll be a vacant seat in June, and also there's always the finance committee. I guess the other thing was sort of on my mind, but this is definitely a personal decision that nobody else can comment on, but I know that when I've done volunteer work that's very similar to my paid work, it can be a lot, and it might be just too many numbers, too much of the same stuff. So that's just one concern I had.
Thank you. Any other comments before we move on?
No.
The next is Vincent. Anyone care to start the conversation?
Oh, sorry, that's
Go ahead,
fine.
Mike.
All right. There's a few things. I took a bunch of notes tonight. Well, first of all, Vincent, I want to thank you for changing your flight to come back here. That shows, shows your drive. I think, we all saw, you're definitely very business oriented. I do think that you want to be involved. You've got the time to be involved. I think that you want to learn. I think that was very apparent, that I think you're willing to work with everybody. And, the fact that you went, last week or whenever that meeting was, and you showed up and you sat there for 4 hours or however long we sat there for, that did impress me, that you took the time to try to get to know us a little bit better.
Thank you. Krista?
Yeah, I think I would agree with everything Michael just said. You've certainly shown an interest, you've been engaged in this process and with learning everything that we would need as a background to do this work. I'm a little bit, same as Ann just said a minute ago, I'm still kind of making up my mind, but I think you would bring a lot of valuable skill sets and some business acumen, and those are certainly assets.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a, well, first of all, yeah, I just want to echo, I really appreciate your having come to our workshop, and
Yeah.
that was a major time commitment, but I think you did get a good sense of, dynamics and kind of processes and stuff. I mean, in general, I always advise people who are interested in getting involved with the town to get involved with the committee first, because especially, I've served on a lot of nonprofit boards, and in addition to my municipal work, and I sometimes have found that, people from the private sector are frustrated at the different pace and processes that are present when outside the private sector, especially smaller firms that can be more nimble. So that's one of the reasons I do encourage people to serve on committees first, to sort of get a sense of what the town is concerned about, and kind of how the committee structure works, and that kind of thing. But I do think that we actually try to ramp down the pressure here in the council and the tension. It does come up. Stuff has to happen sometimes quickly, and not everybody agrees all the time. But we're really aiming for just trying to think ahead and manage our business in such a way that it doesn't create those kind of high pressure situations.
And I thought the presentation you made was certainly, a very confident one. You clearly knew what you wanted to tell us. I do appreciate the fact that you attended also the retreat. I think that was, certainly proof of commitment. I think one of the challenges of being a counselor is to constantly remember that our goal is to try and use words that inform and influence versus just get our point across or get our emotions across. I felt like that was something that you could bring to the council. I did have some concerns, and again, this is still early days in our conversation, but you mentioned a couple of times that you were more of an implementer and a frontline person, and we aren't. That really isn't our role as counselors. So I did wonder if that could pose a challenge for you on the council. But those were my thoughts from your interview. Any other thoughts or questions or share? No? Let's move on to Derek Shirley. Is that,
Jesse?
pardon me, Jesse.
Jesse.
Pardon me, Jesse. Who's our next candidate? You want to kick us off again, Mike?
Sure, I think Jesse was very well spoken. I think I like the fact that he, has been on the rec committee, but that also concerns me because we don't want to lose more people, especially since he just started. I do have a little bit of a concern with some of the social stuff that's happened recently online. It's something that we want to stay away from, and it doesn't have a good look. I personally have done stuff like that myself, so I have to be careful as well. I think if you do get on here, you just have to stay away from that.
Kristen?
Yeah, I would just agree. With the part about you were very well spoken, you presented yourself well. I really appreciated the way you were able to synthesize the goals and vision for the comprehensive plan, and also seemingly had read through that thoroughly, and I had a good understanding of the outcomes we're seeking to achieve here in the community. And I also appreciate your time and commitment with the volunteering you've done in the community, on the rec committee, but also through Patriot Soccer. I think you would add a diverse voice to the council here.
Great, thank you. Ann?
Yeah, I just echo Krista that I really appreciate your having, stepped onto the rec committee, and yeah, it's tough to lose people. I think I'd be willing to live with that. But I really value your other volunteer work in that community as well, with Patriot Soccer and that kind of thing.
I thought you gave a very thoughtful presentation, and it was, definitely it was from the heart. And and it was very broad or sort of the 50,000-foot view, if you will, as opposed to getting down into the details. And I thought, that, to Krista's point, your comments about the comp plan felt well connected to me. I think I don't have social media accounts, so I can't speak to those comments. But I do think that one of the issues that we have struggled with as a town in the past, which I think we've gotten much better at, is we can continue to talk on a subject until we're all ready to grow old and die. I mean, but there has to come a point in time when you move on. And we can't always get to consensus. And eventually, when we have a majority, a clear majority that wants to move the town in a particular direction, and we've had plenty of opportunity to discuss it, and no new information or points of view are coming to the table, that's when we have to kind of make that decision and move on. And for whatever reason in the presentation, I got a feeling that that might be more difficult for you, that you'd be trying to get to that consensus. And I think that I think we have to try, but we have to know when to move on too. So that was just a feeling I came away with from your presentation. Any other thoughts before we move on? Now, Derek Shirley is up. I guess we'll stay the same order of things. Mike, want to kick it off?
It would be fun to have you on the board. I will say that. I think you actually have a lot of great ideas. I think every board needs somebody with a very different view with what everyone else is thinking, because it helps us all kind of center ourselves and see what sometimes I think we think we're doing what everybody wants, but then in the background we're really doing what we want, and I don't think you'd allow that, and that's a good thing. As well as I do, is that you probably should tone it down a little bit, to be taken a little bit more seriously. Other than that, Derek, I'd be happy to work with you. I'd have no problem working with you. But I think what you probably should work on, but you're probably not going to. I mean, because you're who you are, and that's fine. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your passion. I know that you've been here over the years a number of times, and you have thoughts and opinions that you're not afraid to share, and I think that's certainly a valuable asset. Not everyone's brave enough to do that sort of thing. My main concern is just that you do tend to focus solely on cannabis, which I'm not saying is unimportant, but we need to have a broader perspective when we're considering things on this board, and that would be my main concern.
Ann?
Yeah, I really appreciated your creativity and some of the ideas of like cannabis tourism was really something I hadn't actually thought about at all. So that was kind of really fun. I think tempers can erupt in the course of some of these meetings, and I think we've worked hard to, try not to get too angry with each other and to work amicably with each other, even though we disagree. And so I kind of second Mike's remarks there. But and also, I really value your work with the ZBA. I know I served on the ZBA long ago, and I know what that's like. It's kind of tough sledding in some ways, and I appreciate your perspective on that. And I also am a little concerned about your focus on cannabis. Because obviously the council is really going to embrace, has to deal with a ton of different topics and issues. So obviously you bring a lot of expertise to that, and I really value that. But that's not all we're working on. So, but thanks for applying, and I'm really glad to get a chance to know you better.
I wrote down exuberant. I don't think I know a more exuberant person, actually, than you, Derek. And I think you've said it yourself tonight, that's your greatest strength and maybe your Achilles heel, too. I do think, I had a similar note about cannabis being sort of the overriding thing that you were interested in. And I do think the goal of using language and words to influence and bring people along and bring people in is a key component. For me, it's perhaps the most important part of the job. And I think that your time on the ZBA, I think I've seen you grow, to be honest with you, in your ability to be more introspective and to be more patient with other people's points of view. And I think you should be commended for that effort and that improvement. But I think the council needs a little bit more than that at this stage in the game where we're at. But I do appreciate you throwing your hat in the ring and coming here tonight and making the pitch to the council. All right. And last but not least, Mr. Hall.
Sure.
Mike, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So again, I just have to thank you for your service. I mean, it's commendable. My dad was in the Air Force, and I just really appreciate the fact that you stepped up. I think you got a lot of great ideas. It's interesting with your background, what you want to do. I'd really like to try some of this. I can't read my own writing half the time. The total quality leadership, I think, that could help us on the board a little bit maybe at times. I think that you've got a lot of enthusiasm. I don't know as if you really want to be here or if you're here because you feel like you have to be here. And that's the one thing I couldn't grapple with is that, I think you'd make a great job. That's not a question at all, though.
Thank you. Krista.
Yeah, David, to be honest, when I arrived here tonight, I didn't feel like I knew enough about you and your application, but when you got up to speak, I feel like I got a really good sense of your skills and your background and your personality, too. You seem like a very warm and amicable person who would certainly fit in well with this group up here. Still deciding, but I would agree with Michael that you would bring some valuable skill sets, particularly around leadership, organizing, strategic planning that you outlined in your presentation. So, thank you.
Yeah, I was really impressed with your willingness to take on stuff with the Livermore Planning Board there and just, initiating some new ordinances that seemed like they needed to happen and just taking the lead on that. Although I think your background in the total quality world is valuable, our lane in the council is to really focus on policy and not so much to get into the weeds of how staff are doing things. So even though I think that's huge knowledge and skill, I'm not sure that I wonder if you would be frustrated, I guess, serving on the council and not being able to get into the weeds on that and being told back off, that's not your lane. So that's just one concern that I have.
Thank you. You were by far had the calmest, easiest presentation. It was kind of relaxing listening to you, actually. You must be a good storyteller. I think you've had a wide range of skills, a lot of which would be useful here. But I also felt that when you were talking about your experience, like in DHL, and you made a couple of other comments that made me feel like you were more than willing to serve, but you were okay with not serving too. And so for me, it feels like I think we need to select someone who's made that decision in their mind clearly and decided that this is the role that they want to fill. But I think you would be a very valuable member to the community in any way that you decide that you want to serve. That was my impression from our discussion earlier. Anything else? All right, we've been through the list. Again, I know this is not a comfortable position for people to be in, because we have to make a choice.
So do we nominate? How does that work?
Yeah, that's what we're looking for now. We're looking for someone to make a suggestion on a particular person, and then we can discuss that from there.
All right, I'd like to nominate Vince, and I can't pronounce his last name, Palangi. I just feel like Vince has put in the effort to be here. He brings a new voice that we're kind of looking for, and he's got the time to do it, and it'll kind of give us the time to see, it gives us 6 months or 7 months. The other two that are on committees, it would be great if we can keep them on there until the June election.
Any thoughts or comments?
I was going to nominate someone else, but I certainly would be comfortable with Vince sitting here. I think he has shown initiative and interest and passion, for lack of a better word, with the work we're doing. So, but my first choice was actually Jesse Rich. So I don't.
Yeah, I was leaning more towards Jesse as well. I think I really appreciated Vince coming out to the workshop, like I said, and I'm a little nervous about listening, and I feel like Jesse really emphasized listening to people, and I as a council member, you have to do a lot of listening and not necessarily jumping in with your own opinion, and so that's that's just something that's been on my mind.
This might take longer than we thought it would.
Perhaps no.
Because I think at this stage of the game, I'm also leaning towards Vince for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. It's not the coming to the retreat, the putting in, I think, more effort, to be honest with you, than any of the other candidates did, as far as making contact and wanting to understand the job and learn about the job. I hear, I think each of us in turn, and any of the 5 candidates that we select, are going to have to work through their frustrations on the job.
Yeah.
We all need to remind each other sometimes to listen. So I think that it was the level of the quality, I guess, of the presentation and the detail that he presented about himself in the very beginning that was kind of jam-packed with stuff and made more of an impression on me. So that was my thought. So.
We don't have an odd number here.
No, we don't have an odd number tonight, so we're going to have to hammer this out. That's why I said it might take longer than we thought.
How would you like to proceed?
Well, any way, I guess, that gets us to a conclusion.
Maybe should we ask the 2 final candidates to maybe come up and say just a proposition? We've sort of run off the edge of the page, so we could certainly do that. There's nothing that prevents us from doing that. Maybe they'd like to respond to some of the things that we.
Yeah, fair enough. That seems fair to me. If we do it alphabetically, the P's come before the R's, so
Sure.
we'll have Vince come up first, please. I guess we'll start, Vince, if there's anything in particular you'd like to say to Krista's point about what you've heard so far this evening?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think the first thing is about listening. You have to understand, in my career, when you work in the OR, you have to listen to the voice of the surgeons and the staff. It's you know, unless you're there, it's very hard to understand. So, you know, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So I can tell you right now, listening is the thing I do best. And again, I've talked about it. There's nobody probably in this room that's dealt with more face-to-face. When I was with DHL and Airborne, I would work from somebody from the shipping dock up to the CEO, and now in the hospitals, I'd work with C-suite down to the orderlies and the surgeons and the scrub techs. So, you know, I have to listen to them. I have to understand what they're doing, and I have to help them with regards to how to apply our products to what they do. And you want to talk about an environment that you cannot mess up. You've got to be very, very detailed. I'd also like to talk to your point, Dan, with regards to saying I'm more on the implementation side. You know, I think about implementation because that's the end result of your work. But I've had to build programs like, for example, we'll convert a hospital. I have to go around to all the surgeons. I have to know the devices that they use. I have to know how many times they fire it. I have to know all these specifics, and it takes a long time to get there. So sure, you look at the end results because if you did everything right, that is your end result. So the things that you're talking about, I can absolutely do. And again, I can put the time in, and you know, I am all for learning and moving forward with this process, for sure. And I'd really like to see, is there any specific questions that you would have of me, Ann? Is there anything you'd like to ask specifically?
I mean, I think you addressed my concern about listening. I mean,
It's important.
It is important.
You know, what we don't realize here, we're talking about this, but the reality is mentally I look at this a little different. This is kind of like a business in a way. You know, our business is the community. Those are our customers. And so, you know, as you, Krista said, you've got to really go out there, you've got to listen, you've got to engage. And I have that ability to, like I said, you all have different personalities. I can talk to each one of you and turn around and talk to the next one, and I'll never lose a beat. And I can listen to it and put those ideas together, because what we're doing is what I call the community's will in my feeling. So I want to make sure that I'm very clear that listening is a skill that I am very in-depth on.
All right, thanks.
And Krista, questions that you might have?
I guess I would like to better understand your understanding of the comprehensive plan and the visioning for this town, because that's what really stood out for me with Jesse, was that he, I think, really grasped what we were trying to achieve.
Sure, and I understand that. And, you know, again, for 30 years, I was probably up before most of you were out, and I was back. And so I've reviewed things, but as I got into it and I started having questions, I almost found myself pulling back a little bit, because if I have this opportunity, I really want to learn the right way. I don't want to have any predetermined perceptions of this, that, or the other thing. And the reality is, I could sit down in one day and get very involved very quick. And the reason I had kind of talked about, you know, my training and the stress that I went through was because I have the ability to take things as complex as they are, and I have the ability to break them down into their elements and learn them quickly. So I'm not worried about the learning aspect. I know I can do that. I'm more concerned with the people aspect and the face-to-face and making you feel comfortable with me being here.
Right. It's not so much that you can't learn what's on the comprehensive plan.
Sure.
It's more just the sense I'm getting from you, and perhaps you just need to do some more listening and conversing with constituents. But you know, the town has a very specific vision that we're working on with state partners to implement, and I just don't want us to lose sight of that on the council, and the comprehensive plan is that guide.
Absolutely,
So,
and I almost think it would be a little loss of sight if I tried to bring in my own ideas, and that's why I said when I would come here, I don't want to bring my ideas in as much as we have all these programs already in place that you're looking at moving on. I really want to come in and say, you know, Krista, which one are you really focused on? How can I help you? What are you working on? And once we bring those to fruition and we start moving on to other things, I'll definitely have other ideas and things that I'd like to bring to the table. But for now, I'd really like to come in and help you folks complete what you do, and maybe help you do them a little better with some of my experience.
Since you were able to go to that workshop, you got to see a lot of things that
Sure.
we all talked about. And I think probably what these ladies are looking for is, we don't want, how can I say this? One of the things is that we want is we want to get to these things that we all want to achieve for. Is there one that you, in particular, that you really are behind, that you
Sure.
feel is important, that you can put your hands around?
Absolutely.
Because, and I think that's where we'd like to hear from you, is that, what is that? And, just give us a minute about that.
Sure. I think if I look at everything, I think the thing that I was really excited about is, as being a citizen here and a member of the community for 20 years, would be the Great Revitalization Project. I think, to me, if you look at a town that looks nice and gives a good impression, which this town certainly can, it will bring businesses. And I want to see the right type of businesses here. And what I mean by that is, if you have the right type of business here, people will see that, and then other businesses will follow a similar. And I want a place where the families can come and people can go out and feel comfortable walking around and doing things. I don't know if anybody's been to Pennsylvania. There's this place called Peddler's Village, and it's this amazing area. There's all these different shops that you walk around, and I would love to see this town be like that. I mean, we really have a central location, and we can do so much. So to me, out of all the projects that I saw, would be the Great Revitalization, just to make this town look beautiful, and people will be proud of it, and people will start to come here. And once you get businesses here, and you get the right businesses, that snowballs and brings other businesses. So to me, that would be the project that I would be most interested out of everything that I saw.
Very good. Anything else?
Yes, please.
Well, I was just going to note, I'm going to go back to listening, and I just want to point out that you interrupted me and you interrupted Krista, and I get that you are passionate about this, but I think it's important to be clear that when we talk about listening, we talk about not interrupting people, and so that's, for me, that's a red flag. But I do appreciate your passion and your skill. I really believe that you would make a fine counselor. I don't have any problem with that in terms of your other skills, but that would be one that I think you would need to work on.
Very good.
So any other questions from you, Ann, at all?
I don't think so. Thank you.
Okay.
And Krista?
No, thank you. That helped me to hear what you have,
Okay.
your
All
thoughts
right.
on.
And
Thank you
Dan,
very
anything
much.
from you, my friend?
No, all set. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you very
Thank you.
Thank you, Vince.
Jesse.
Wow. Thank you, guys, for the nomination, and honestly, being up here, it's quite an honor. So then you brought up a great point of making a final decision when it comes down to it. And I absolutely believe that you do make a great point. I do believe in talking things through, but again, I do, with my background from strategic planning, lean to the data. So looking at the numbers, reading the documentation, going through it, really make your own decision, because then you can actually converse about it and your point of view. Because words on the paper are going to say one thing, but then talking with people, you're going to hear a different opinion, how they read it and how I read it. And it could be the same, it could be different. So I absolutely agree with what your point is, but I can tell you, I will make a decision when the time comes.
Okay, thank you. If you could, as I don't have social media accounts, what Mike made some mention to, can you speak to that at all? I'm not sure what.
Is that
We-
relevant, really, if he was doing it as a private citizen and not as a council member?
So,
Whoop, whoop.
sorry.
That's all right.
Yep.
Hold on. That's a fair question. I am concerned about the whole social media stuff and its impact on the conversations that happen in town. We do have pretty definite standards within the council rules as far as social media is concerned. So I'm not accusing you of anything by any stretch of the imagination, but I just want to understand that that's an issue that going forward wouldn't be a problem, that's all. So yeah, I'm not making any comments at all about your right to make any comments that you want to make. It's strictly in regards to your would-be role as a counselor.
Absolutely, I would follow the rules. Mike, you do make a great point. The social media is a great platform to hear the town as well, because a lot of people can voice their opinion openly, publicly. So reading the comments and going through it is a great place to hear what people have to say.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
Anything else?
No, I'm, yeah, I'm still, I'm deciding, but
Pardon me?
I'm just deciding, but
Okay.
yeah. Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. All right, gang, where do we go from here?
I don't know how you'd like to, I'm confident with my vote as it is, so.
Might as well, yeah. I mean, it's only 7 months, in one way, so, and there will be an open seat and, well, there'll be you'll have to, whoever gets appointed will have to, if they want to pursue the remaining year in that term, would have to run for re-election at that point, and then there'll be an open 3-year seat as
Yeah.
well. So there'll be opportunities coming up for people to serve.
Absolutely. For each of them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't feel that we can leave tonight without making a decision,
Yeah, I agree with that, yeah.
because I don't think that would be good for the community, and I don't
Yeah.
think it
And-
would.
and
So
Yes, Mike?
I am concerned with, I know we can't look I understand what you're saying, okay, about, we all have our own public, our private platforms. My concern more is that I felt like in a political arena, which this is kind of, it didn't go the way somebody wanted it to go, and they were trying to influence. And that's not what we want.
So,
That's why I have a concern.
I guess I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
what
No,
you're
me neither,
speaking
yeah,
to, so that's
yeah.
where I can't
I think the point,
have an opinion on that.
I think the only point really where it's relevant is that each of us has been in the position where we've been on the short side of the vote. And as a counselor, I have an opportunity here to express my point of view and my opinion and convince at least 2 other people that I've got the best idea of the bunch. If I fail to do that, I really only have 2 options at that point. I can either support the majority point of view, or quite frankly, I can stay silent. Because I've had an opportunity to express how I feel. I've made my point to everybody so that it's known. I do not believe in torpedoing the majority's point of view. I do not think that does the community any good whatsoever. We have to reach a point where we move on. And I think, quite frankly, as a community in the past, we've struggled sometimes doing that successfully. And I think that, for me, is part of this question. If either of these 2 candidates doesn't get their way, for instance, are they still going to support the work of the majority? And I'm not saying I know the answer to that. Obviously, I'm not clairvoyant. But that piece is important to me, because I think that over the years that I've been on the council, when the council's been able to have a fair and open, honest discussion, get it all out on the table, and then make a decision and move on, and bring the community along too, that's when we've been the most successful. And we're poised to have a lot of positive things, I think, happen for the community. In part because as a community, I think we've gotten better at talking to one another. So that's something that I want to protect, I guess, and that's playing into the decision I'm making tonight. So.
Yeah, I don't know that I, think that we can predict how someone will function as a counselor based on what they've done as a private citizen entirely on social media. I mean, there was one role that you're playing as a private citizen, and it's a different role in the council. I mean, I have a Facebook page where I post all manner of controversial things that I wouldn't put on my council Facebook page. But and I think it's entirely possible to keep those two things separate. Yeah.
I agree completely. Yeah, I actually said as much, yeah.
I mean,
And
No, but just to
sorry.
go.
No, you go ahead. That's,
I would agree. My biggest concern, Ann, was it happened a few days before we have to speak. So that just brings me to, thinking, that's all.
Yeah,
And I have to look at that.
I just wanted to speak to your point, Dan, about how, whether or not whoever sits up here next could get behind what the majority votes on, regardless of their personal opinion. And I didn't get the sense from either of the people that were discussing that they couldn't do that.
yeah,
So for me, it's just coming down to how well one or the other has expressed the vision that personally I agree with, and that I know a majority of people agree with based on their votes around the comprehensive plan back in 2020. So.
yeah.
And I feel like I keep coming back to this listening business, but I do think it's important, and active listening and, letting people say their piece is when people call me at home or that kind of thing, I spend a lot of time just listening to what they have to say.
Yeah.
And I do have concerns that Vince is obviously a very bright person, has a ton of experience and a lot of passion, and I just wonder, I'm a little concerned about his willingness to just sort of listen to people talk about what their issues are.
I hear you.
That's listening.
There's a request for public comment.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Yes, we can allow public comment. We'll use the same rules that we've always used. From the standpoint of setting some guardrails, if you will, for the conversation, the topic on the table is appointing counselor and the traits you think are important for us to be thinking about with regards to that counselor. So if there is anyone that would like to come to the microphone and share their thoughts, now would be the time to do it. Please just state your name and your address.
Yep. Hey there, my name is Rachel Edston. I'm on Homestead Acres. I think after listening to everybody as an outsider, I think it's important to consider who has the time here. And I was pretty impressed with Vincent listening to him. He's a businessman. He seems like he was very prepared for tonight. And it seems like he has the time. He's retired, and he has a lot to bring to the table. And I think just something to consider is, I hope coming in tonight that each of you listened, and that you didn't have any predetermined, vote prior to this evening coming in, because I think, everybody worked hard, and I think it's important to recognize that. So appreciate everybody that applied.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Yes, please. State your name and address.
Lena Reichert, Sasha's Way. I just wanted to also point out the importance between, it's not necessarily so important that the person you select is super experienced and knows how everything works right now. We want to know that they have the ability to be that way. And if it is somebody that is coming in, we want them to know what they don't know, rather than know what they do know. And not that social media is necessarily a big piece of things, but occasionally something does get posted on social media that can show a very, very strong lack of understanding of how things work. And whether or not you see that particular post, there can be very substantial concerns with it being, a strong belief that they know what they know, or when they don't. And so selecting somebody who can come in and say, I like to learn, I know I'm good at absorbing information, I know that I have the ability to hear things and absorb and then react, rather than coming in with the kind of a set of what they, may not have the same ability to understand what they don't know, is just a concern sometimes.
Any comments or thoughts?
I would just like to take some issue with the note about time and commitment. I think just because someone is retired and doesn't have other commitments does not mean that they can't devote their time and energy to being up here. I have 2 children at home and a full-time job, and I'm here when I need to be and prepared. So I do take issue with that as a judgment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that. When I'm partially retired, but volunteering my brains out, not just on the council level, but in the town, but in a number of other things as well. So I feel like I'm just as busy as somebody who's full-time employed. So I'm less concerned about that. When I served on the school board, I had 2 young children and was, also ran my own business and still managed to find the time to serve. So I'm less concerned about that. Although I do appreciate that some people have less flexible schedules in their work and would have trouble making like an earlier meeting, like Mike has pointed out.
Yeah, I think for me, in Mr. Rich's case, yes, you may.
I know it looks like I'm out of the running, but I want to address a couple things. One is, Mr. Johnson asked me, what do I have that they don't have? Wisdom and experience. Okay? And the other thing, you could hear it when I talked about the planning board. And the other question was nervous. So the other question was, sorry.
It's all right. It can be very nerve-wracking to stand up in public and have this kind of conversation.
Yeah, the other question was, would I like to do this
Yes.
after the term?
Yeah.
Well, of course I would. I just honored his I answered as honestly as I could.
Yeah.
I said that if you didn't want me here, I don't want to be here, right? I don't want to do something for the town that's no benefit, right? Their answers are, yes, I'm going to be here. What if nobody wants them here, right? Well, if the votes come in because they don't know them, all they do is a name recognition, then they got them. I don't want to be here if it's not adding to the town's benefit. But yes, of course, I wouldn't be here doing this. I wouldn't have got up and spoke.
Yep.
Yes, I absolutely want this job. And yes, I will do my best and give it my 100%. And I would absolutely run again in June. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just acknowledge the unbelievable awkwardness of doing effectively a job interview in public? I mean, oh my God, you guys have been amazing.
Yes.
And I just want to thank you for that.
Yeah.
And you don't hurt my feelings.
Oop. So
Thank you.
I also want to say that I think that, quite honestly, this has been the most public discussion since I've been on the council that we've ever had about candidates coming in to fill a vacancy. And I think one of the reasons why it hasn't happened in part historically is because it's so darn awkward. A lot of times conversations like these are usually held in a closed room where you don't have to share everything and you don't have to put your opinion about someone on public display quite like this. So yeah, I think all 5 of you have participated as well as we could, or anyone could ever really have hoped. So enough from me, Mr. Shirley?
Yeah, no, I just want to answer your question. What you guys said, what it takes to be a councilman. And for me, that can look different from person to person. Mm-hmm. I will say, for me personally, I have to think, well, maybe what if I was up here just passionate about cars? What if I was real passionate about cars? Would that have made a difference? Or is it because of the stigma of cannabis that is putting me in a position? Now, I understand that I'm passionate, but you have to understand, I come from a guy that shouldn't be here. A doctor should be here. You know, these guys should be here. I climbed up this ladder to be here, and I showed myself that I cared more than just cannabis because I joined the CBA for several years now. So when I hear say you want someone for the people, you want someone with committee experience, I'm sitting here, well, I have all these things, I'm for the people, but I guess because I just talk too much about cannabis, I don't get the running. And that's where I get kind of confused and why I fight so hard for these cannabis rights, because this is the exact stigma I'm talking about. Because if this was any other industry, if I came here talking about roses, would you guys would it hit us hard? And that's where I'm thinking here, where I'm like, you know, we're looking for this, that, and third. I was like, I nailed all of those. I have experience. I went through out of my comfort zone, out of cannabis to learn about the ZBA. But I can't even get, you know, because I'm in cannabis, that's just too much. And, you know, I've stood and spoke for many laws in the State House other than cannabis, but I'm just speaking to you on my specialty, and because that's why we're here to do. So when I look for someone, I look for someone that actually gives a crap, than someone that's gonna listen to the people and actually listen. Because I know what it takes to be in the position to make people listen. And that's all I'm saying. And I don't think, frankly, there's not enough people living, no representative of someone that's living paycheck to paycheck like myself out there. Everyone else maybe has a second home or whatever. And I think that's what this board is missing. An ordinary person truly living paycheck to paycheck. And, you know, I'm sorry if I ran about myself, and I agree, this is very awkward. But I couldn't sit back and listen to everyone talk about everything, and my only negative is cannabis, and the fact that I'm aggressive. I mean, don't you guys want someone, you describe someone else with passion? I mean, but I can't be passionate because it's cannabis? And that's where I'm just confused and like where I'm standing on. And I'm not saying to rethink your decision or anything, but I'm just letting you know how I feel. Because that's how it kind of feels. It's just like, I hit everything you hit, but you talked about cannabis too much. And I just want you to think, if this was any other agricultural product, would you give me that line?
If it was blueberries, yes, I would.
Okay.
If it was fish, I would still do it.
Yeah.
It's not intended as a criticism, but to be honest with you, and it's the power of your personality. Someone said it earlier. I felt like I was in church just now, and that's not a criticism of you, but I don't think that approach lends itself to drawing other people out. Let me finish. It doesn't draw out the timid. It doesn't draw out the people who might have a good idea, who are sitting quietly at the back of the room, afraid to speak. And again, that's not intended as a personal insult to you at all. But that's it. So yeah, if it was blueberries.
Yeah, and I recommend call Scarborough when I filled their town halls with everyone. Call Wyndham when they try to jack up the licensing fees. I filled their halls up. So I can fill this building up just as quick.
I don't know that.
And I'm just saying, like, I'm here to help, and you guys are deciding between, you know, two people that really don't seem like they give a crap at all. And like, the fact of the matter is, here's someone that I'm out here grinding for the ZBA, and you guys are just literally knocking, and you say it's not, but if it was any other industry, it wouldn't be. You can't tell me you wouldn't. Because these people have been grinding, it's programmed in you to be discriminated against us. I got text message from saying, wow, this guy really picked you apart just because you use cannabis and talk about cannabis. And that's a problem. And if you guys want to sit here and waste your time, that's fine, but you guys are obviously deadlocked. It's not a secret. Why don't you actually pick someone that actually has the balls to tell you to pick someone? Like, honest to God, this is this crap I'm talking about. This is awkward. Get over it. This is your job. And this is the type of stuff this is why you need me. Because I'll kick your butts into gear. So sorry, I'll sit down now. I overspoke. My apologies.
No, you don't have to apologize for anything. Absolutely.
So, I really mainly just want to address one thing, coming from Krista. I don't think that's fair to characterize my former employer as I work there, but I understand the concerns, and I'm not one to drag anyone through the mud, to be honest with you. But that's not really a fair characterization of my character.
Yeah, it wasn't a personal characterization. It's more, this town has a history with RHR, and we are trying to move on, and I don't know how much you know or what dynamic that will bring to the council, so it's just a concern that I have.
I understand. And I respect that decision of you and the other council members. I think for me, hearing all the other candidates, Jesse to me spoke the most. I feel like he would do a fantastic job. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Well, I think one of the solutions is to pick a different candidate.
Yeah, right, true.
I mean, that is an option. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, by all means. Oh, no, we haven't decided.
We're still getting on with it.
Just your name,
Find the phone number.
oh, it's right at the top of the agenda, but that's okay. Just your name and address, please.
Judy Simino, 4 Arlington Court. So I have been listening online, and I did watch a lot of the workshops today, but I just got out of the office. So I did listen to the candidate. It's very impressive to have this many people wanting the job. But so I did really like Vincent, and I thought the reason why is because he has come to other stuff that I saw him at, which I think is impressive. That actually shows some serious initiative. And the other thing too is you have Jesse that's already on a board. He's already on something. So why would you take him off something to be on something else? It's like a jumping ship already. It's like, so leave him where he is, and then in 6 months let him get on this if he wants to get on this in addition or whatever. But I just thought it would be a good way to get somebody new in on the board, and that way there you got somebody already in place on the Jesse, whatever he's got already. Oh, I'm so out of breath. I ran through the parking lot. But I just really liked what Vincent had to say. And he is in for the development of Gray. And he really kind of had a lot of positive things to say about it. So I thought where you guys really are focused on that, I thought that was a good combination. So thank you.
Well, as has been said tonight on a few occasions, everybody that applied brings strengths, and
Yeah.
we all have strengths and weaknesses. We're elected, we're here, we have our strengths and weaknesses too. I wasn't joking about if we're at an impasse over these two candidates discussing a third candidate. I know you have concerns about Levi and RHR. I don't share those. I would if he was still employed by RHR, but I don't have them now that he isn't. And he was also on my list of people who possibly could fill this role.
I mean, I'm certainly having a finance background would be hugely beneficial for budgetary reasons, among others. So.
I have to pee, so if that's what it takes to get this done.
We can recess for 10 minutes or 5 minutes.
Maybe we should do that.
Why don't we will take a, what time is it?
Sorry.
We will take a 10-minute recess and be back here at 8:43. Pardon me, 8:33. Okay. All right, folks. We'll wait for us to get there's the on-air sign. We are back. Thank you for your patience. And I don't remember who proposed it, but thank you very much to the person who suggested that we recess for a few minutes, because that's not a bad way to go. I was serious when I suggested that if we're at an impasse with Vincent and Jesse, that we look at a third candidate, because I do think that each of you brings strengths and weaknesses to the job, just like we do. And I do think that we have to break the impasse. We have to move on. We do have to remember that we're filling a 7-month position. We're not filling a 3-year term. I think I might feel differently about that. And the candidate that I suggested we discuss as an alternative was Levi. And I'm comfortable supporting Levi in this role to fill this position for the next 7 months. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
So are you making a motion?
No, well, I'm looking for input right now.
Yeah. Listen, as we said at the beginning, I think all these guys will do a good job. I'm more comfortable with that.
As I said earlier, I think he brings an extremely valuable skill set that would add to this council, so I too would be comfortable with that. I appreciated his comments about his objectivity with his former employer.
Yep.
That did make me feel a little better.
Ann?
Yeah, I think that would work. I think we could use that skill set.
So are you willing to amend the motion then?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll reread the motion. Let me get to my spot here.
Do I need to agree on the second?
You would have to redo the second.
I would agree.
I gotta hear thanks. So the motion be it resolved that the Greytown Council hereby appoints Levi Robinson as the interim town councilor to fill the term of the position which became vacant on September 12, 2024, until the next annual municipal election to be held on June 10th, 2025, and shall serve until a successor is elected to fill the unexpired term. Are you willing to amend your motion, Ann?
Yes.
And your second, Krista?
Yes.
All right. Is there any further discussion before we go to vote?
I just would like to reiterate that, what Dan said, that you're all highly qualified, you're all clearly interested, and I do hope that you continue to be interested as part of the election process in June and thereafter.
Couldn't have said it better?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right, we'll go to a vote. Ann?
Yes.
Krista?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Congratulations, Levi.
And thank you all for being such wonderful, forbearing candidates, honestly, with this process.
Yes. I'll say it again, that it was, I've never ever heard of another job interview that's been as public as this one. You'd go to jail, I think, if you tried to do a job interview like this. But this is the way we have to work. And you all have behaved completely professionally.
Completely admirably, yeah.
It's clear to me that each one of you is concerned about the community, which is why I hope you all run for council in June. I only have 18 more months, and I'm definitely not signing up for another 3-year term, so there'll be other opportunities in the future too. And we do have committee openings that we would be blessed if any of you are willing to entertain those positions, for those of you that aren't already serving on a committee already. All right, very good, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
We will move on
Might want
to
to clear
the,
the room.
we will move on to the second and final reading, the last piece of old business that we have to do before we Move on, Order 2425-11, the amendment to the parking ordinance, Chapter 502. And now we lost all our audience.
Yeah, I know, really, just when we get to the exciting part.
Proposed be it ordained that the town council of the town of Gray, Maine, and council assembled to amend Chapter 502, the parking ordinance, as recommended by the town manager and the public works director. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion Krista, second. And this is something for a final reading for anyone who's online that may still be with us. We have discussed the parking ordinance twice already. Some of this comes from changes in the law and giving us the ability that in the, say, a snow emergency, we have the ability to create a parking ban. And also to the Public Works Director and the Town Manager have corrected or updated our very outdated list of where we could park and where we couldn't park based on telephone numbers and other numerology. So this isn't the first time that we've talked about this. It's really just a formality at this point for us. Is there any discussion?
Just that I think it's a much needed option, particularly during snow emergencies. I know we discussed about improving signage at our last workshop, which I know staff will be working on. And there's no new additions to streets here. It's really just kind of a clarification of rules that were already in.
Right. Michael?
Yeah, I'll just, so some have been removed where the ordinance wasn't necessary anymore.
Oh, my mistake,
So if
sorry.
you look at the old one, so basically we visited, the Public Works Director and I visited every location. There was like one of the roads, for example, it's down here off Lewiston Road. A number of years ago, the road was reconfigured and reconstructed. I forget which one that is. Let me just find the old one. Oh, we don't have the old one in this packet. We had included the old one in the last one. I forget what road that is. Oh, is it Foster Hill Road? It was one of those where the road was actually configured a number of years ago and that ordinance was never updated. So we revisited all these locations. Some of them referred to pole numbers, which don't really exist anymore. So we wanted to make them be measurements from certain locations like addresses, which addresses don't change. Poles could change, poles could come down, poles could be reconfigured. So we updated it to include all of that in a schedule form that goes in order by street in alphabetical order. So it's a little bit easier to read. And then we broke out whether it's no parking and or restricted parking. And so those are changed as well in there. And then lastly, we will work on updating all the signage, but it's not going to happen overnight.
No.
So
Yeah.
it's going to happen
Understood.
over
Yeah.
time. And in addition to this, once we update this, we're going to be working with the Sheriff's Department to develop a ticket, a municipal ticket, that if we need to issue violations, they have the ability to do it, as well as I mentioned that town staff would have the ability to do that as well.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The ticket, will that include other things like the weight limit?
Other municipal violations we have,
yeah.
traffic related, yeah.
Because we've talked that some of our wording and some of our ordinances really isn't particularly effective as far as coming up with fines for things like that. And then also, I just want to add, I believe this is correct me if I'm wrong, one of the changes with the ADU law is that we can't require off-street parking. And so there could be instances where people have to park on the street, but without this ordinance, we don't have the ability to have a snow ban. So there's a bunch of things going on here, but it's a great update to what we currently have. So thank you.
One item I forgot to mention was we also updated to say the fine will be in the fee schedule.
Yeah.
So in the near future, before the budget, I was going to bring the updated fee schedule to you to consider with whatever that fine is. Where we don't have a lot of problems with the parking. This is
No.
more just an update to the ordinance, so it's not like we have problems that we have to address every day because of this. This is just refining it for the future.
We don't have to have 3 hearings to change the fee schedule.
No,
Yeah, so that
it makes it a little
it's a
easier.
much added advantage. All right, great, thank you. Any other comments? We'll go to vote. Ann?
Yes.
Krista?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. The motion carries. New business. We have no business licenses, but we do have some resolves. Resolve 242513, appointing Sandra Carter to the Resilience Committee. Be it resolved that the Gray Town Council hereby appoints Sandra Carter as a regular member of the Resiliency Committee with a term expiring August 31st, 2027. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion Ann, second Krista. Is there any discussion?
I'll just say that I'm the liaison to the Resiliency Committee, and Sandy does a great job of, managing that committee and just puts in a lot of hours over and above, what you might normally expect in that role. So really appreciate her work and her willingness to step up again.
Yeah, agreed.
She is a longtime contributor. And my role model is council chair, which I don't think I quite live up to her
I don't
level
think
of
anyone can, yeah.
her organization, but yes. Anything, Mike? All set?
No, I'm all set.
We'll go to vote then. Ann?
Yes.
Krista?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Thank you very much, Sandy. The next appointment is Resolve 2425-15, appointing, and I've been afraid of having to say this all night long, Waldemir Pajamic. And I apologize for, I'm sure I didn't do your name justice. To the planning board, the motion is be resolved that the Greytown Council hereby appoints Waldemir Pajamic as a regular member of the planning board with a term expiring August 31st, 2027. Do I have a motion?
So moved?
Second, Mike. Moved Ann, second Mike. Is there any comment?
I would just like to, as we discussed earlier, we have such a hard time getting people to join boards like this, so I really appreciate, I don't know this individual, but I appreciate anybody stepping up to the plate and trying to learn more, and, and hopefully we can get more people involved.
Go ahead, Krista.
So I do wish Wladimir was here this evening. I feel for a role on the planning board, I don't really understand enough about his skill sets that would be applicable to that board. He also indicated that he thinks the responsibility for the board and committee is to ensure the vision of the citizens is carried out by the town government, and I wouldn't really say that that's the responsibility of the planning board. So I have some reservations about his appointment, and I wish he were here so that I could ask him some questions. But just based on his application, I'm not sure I have enough to go on here.
Ann, do you have any comment?
Yeah, that was kind of my concern as well. I mean, we always really do appreciate anybody trying to step up for boards and committees, especially the planning board, because we do need another person there. But it is really helpful, especially for those quasi-public boards like the ZBA and the planning board, to to really provide us with some information about your background. And I didn't feel like he gave us a lot.
Yes, I agree. In fact, I think we need to look at our process for appointing people to both planning board and ZBA from the standpoint that they are quasi-judicial boards that carry a level of responsibility that none of the other town council committees are responsible for. The planning board isn't really implementing the vision, isn't their point. They're implementing the ordinances and making sure that the ordinances that are created are adhered to within the confines of their ability to make whatever variances to that they may need to and can justify. And I think for me, the other piece was not having read the comp plan. I just don't feel comfortable at this point in time appointing them to the planning board. So I'm in this case, going to be a no. I know we need people, but we do need to make sure that when we make these decisions that we're putting people on those two committees in particular, I think that we know with confidence we'll be able to do that work.
I would encourage Volodymyr, to come in and maybe reapply if we don't pass him as a member this evening, just to maybe resubmit an application with more information about his intent and what he thinks the role is for the board.
Or
But-
perhaps even consider another committee.
That
Yes.
If I may suggest, I agree maybe having a different updated process for the two critical boards, but maybe would you want to consider tabling this and setting up a time for him to meet with you and the vice chair to discuss the role and responsibility, and then if he wants to continue with the application, you could reconsider it at a future meeting?
I think personally, well, we'll go around and find out. Personally, I think I would probably vote this down and ask him to reapply, is how I would perceive myself. I don't know how others
But if he
feel.
reapplies, the same situation's going to happen. We'll bring it forth to the town council.
Well, but it's not strictly the way that he applied. I think there are some questions, like I said, the lack of understanding of the comp plan for me is a big issue for not being able to.
But if he
support
were
this
to
nomination.
come in on an
Yeah.
evening.
Yeah.
So then could we
speak to
table
him.
it and tell him that the council would like to meet him in person before they consider the application?
I mean, that's up to the chair and the rest of
Yeah,
the
no, I'm in favor of voting on the nomination tonight and then
Okay.
restarting it.
I think either way, I think we do need to change the process. I think we should have a referral also from somebody that may be on the board already. There's a lot of things that we can add. And the other thing is that when we do this, I do think that we probably should move forward, have them be part of this, is that they do have to show up, so we have to meet them. And I think that's not their fault, that's ours.
Well, we've talked about, past councils have talked about actually requiring committee members to come in for the night they're appointed just for this purpose so that we can do that. Past councils have decided that was, I guess, too much to ask, but we can certainly revisit that.
I think in particular, as Ann said a minute ago, for these semi-judicial boards, like the planning board and the ZBA, we would be good to have a better understanding of people's skill sets than what this application usually captures.
And we also have the ability with the planning board, and I should know this answer, but I can't think of it off the top of my head, to appoint someone as an alternate too. Ideally, the planning board and the ZBA have a full contingent of members, and they have alternates such that can be essentially learning the job, because there is so much to it. Once upon a time, we used to have enough volunteers that we had alternates on our planning board, but we haven't had that for quite some time. I think we've almost kind of forgotten that we have alternate positions that we can appoint. So we don't necessarily have to appoint even someone who applies to either of these boards to a full position. So it's something that we can consider in the future. But I would like us to revamp the process, I think, before we go much further.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
So we had a committee or workshop, and the council voted on adjusting the committee policy and the rules, and you called on us to publicize the need for committee volunteers, which we did, stressing the planning board being a one that needed to be filled. So we've been doing that, and our communications team has continued to pump that out, and now we have an applicant, and the applicant's gonna get voted down because you guys wanna change the process, that we just went through an exercise to update the committee policy, and we didn't consider that. So it's just, if I were him, I would be discouraged, applying for a position that now I'm being rejected for. That's why I suggested to potentially table the item. We contact him and say the council would like you to come in and talk to them, and then we can consider changing the process in the future. Otherwise, I think we're going to continue to be in this circumstance where people are going to respond to our calls to serve, and then they're going to apply, and we're not going to have enough information about them, and the council's going to be concerned about voting on them. So I'm just trying to avoid, to support you in creating a vicious cycle.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes, Krista?
Just a point on that. It's not so much the process
Yeah.
for me here. Generally, this process has worked, but it's reliant on people providing enough information in these applications, and this just does not do that. So based on this information, I'm not comfortable voting on this person. But you know, that's why I suggested perhaps they could reapply with more information. It would be a bonus to have them come in here. I know that's not part of our process currently, but it's really just the lack of information here for me more than anything.
Then is that what you would like us as staff to provide for feedback to the applicant?
Yeah, depending on, I mean, it sounds like we
I
won't.
can call the applicant if you
Yeah,
want.
we
Okay,
won't
if
be-
you would like to.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I'm open to tabling it.
Yeah, I mean, I would be open to that.
And if he submits, either comes in and talks with you guys, or submits more information, either one.
Well, we have a motion now to vote up and down, so if someone wants to make a motion to table it, you're gonna have to amend your motion. I'm not making this decision based on the process. I'm making this decision based on the information I have, and primarily, like I said, specifically the fact that if someone can't take the time to read the abridged version of the comp plan before they fill out their application and apply for the planning board, we don't think in my mind, they haven't met the criteria for serving on that particular board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm less concerned about that. I feel like, I mean, he may just not have been aware that we were looking for more information, and so I'm comfortable reconsidering his application if I have more information about him, and so I'd be happy to amend my motion to allow for tabling this and getting more information and reconsidering it at a future
Okay.
meeting.
So just
And,
procedurally, it wouldn't be an amendment, it would be
Right.
a motion to table, to reconsider at the next meeting.
correct.
Yeah.
So Ann has said that she's willing to amend the motion to table, well, not to amend it, but to table the motion till our next meeting.
Right.
Michael's agreed to that. Is there any other discussion? All right, we'll go to vote. Ann?
Yes.
Krista?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
I'm a no. The motion passes, so we will table this and take it up at a later date. The next order of business is appointing Denise M. Clavat as our Economic Development Director. Oh, boy. Be resolved that the Gray Town Council hereby appoints Denise M. Clavat as the Economic Development Director as recommended by the town manager and the interview committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Krista? Motions and seconds. Is there? Yes, Mr. Foley.
Thank you. May I introduce our recommendation?
Please do.
I'm going to read from our announcement that we put out here. Following an extensive search and with the unanimous selection of the interview committee, we've recommended that the town council consider the appointment of Denise Clavat as Gray's new Economic Development Director. Denise brings a wealth of experience and proven track record in economic community development, strategic planning, financial and project management, and public relations. With over 30 years of municipal government experience and nearly 15 years dedicated to economic development, she has led municipal efforts in business retention and expansion projects, resulting in the retention of over 700 jobs and creation of over 400 jobs in Maine communities. Denise has successfully developed and implemented numerous grants and programs, including downtown facade improvement grants and various housing grants. With experience managing budgets ranging from $100,000 to $6.5 million, Denise has overseen over 75 projects, including significant community impact projects such as the Fort Kent Trail System and the Main Street traffic and pedestrian improvements in South Berwick. She has extensive experience in legislative advocacy, strategic planning, and community engagement, and has led several interdepartmental teams for comprehensive website redesigns and major redevelopment projects. Denise is known for her collaborative approach, working effectively with boards, commissions, town and city councils, businesses, and nonprofits. She has a strong background in staff recruitment, professional development, and strategic planning. As Economic Development Director, Denise will lead efforts to enhance the town's economic vitality by fostering business retention, expansion, and attraction. This role involves strategic planning, financial management, and community engagement to drive sustainable growth and development. The director will collaborate with local businesses, government agencies, and community organizations to implement programs and initiatives that support economic development, job creation, and community improvement. Key responsibilities include managing budgets, securing grants, and with the support of the town engineer/project manager, Mike Thomas, overseeing projects that enhance the town infrastructure and quality of life. Denise has a bachelor's degree in recreation and park management from the University of Maine, and most recently worked for the towns of South Berwick and City of Saco. As required by the town's charter, this position requires appointment that's scheduled this evening, and we are excited to welcome Denise to our team and look forward to the positive impact she'll bring to our community. And if it's okay with everyone, I'd like to invite her up to the podium to just introduce herself and say a few words before
Please
the
do.
council votes.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'll start first by commending this council for a very comprehensive interview process. I'm impressed. I've worked in several Maine communities, and by far, bar none, this is one of the most challenging parts of your council, but one of the most delicately handled processes, so thank you. Thank you. I'm humbled and honored to be considered your new economic development director. Yes, I have a resume and a lot of experience, but most importantly, I come here with a clean slate, fresh eyes, and an opportunity to help Gray move the needle, whatever that may look like, however far it needs to go, but with the community's input and the involvement of all of the council and all of the elected officials in any capacity in all of the committees. It's very important to involve everybody collaboratively before you do anything. So I just want you to know that, as I said in the interview, I have an open door policy, and that's for folks, but it's for the community. I want to hear from people, I want to hear from businesses, because that's the only way that you succeed. So, and I mean you, and not me, your community succeeds. So, thank you, and I'm very pleased to be and honored to be here.
Thank you very much, yeah.
And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now or later.
Anyone have questions or comments?
Yeah, we actually had a brief discussion, and we decided to go back to the format we had a few minutes ago. So Judy and Pam and all them are gonna get up and tell us what their skills are, and we're gonna vote over it in public. Now, listen, I'm really excited about this position. You know, I look forward, I'm concerned about the position, just I wanna make sure that we can do what it needs to do, and I'm hoping you're the right person for it, because it's an expense for us, you know, and I look forward to you, you know, I think you've got the right qualifications. I really hope that we can grow this community, because that's what we need you to do, you know, so I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, oh, sorry, Krista, I didn't notice.
Yeah, I just also want to welcome you. We didn't have the opportunity to meet during the interview process, but just looking over your qualifications, you certainly are highly qualified. I think you can lend a lot of expertise to the right types of things we need currently in town. And I just noted, you know, the places you have been are places I want to spend time. So I think that's a plus, and I'm hoping Gray will be that space soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to echo that, and I was fortunate to sit in on the interview process, and Denise was by far and away the top candidate, and I think it was unanimous choice, and we
Yep.
were excited that she accepted our offer, so thank you for being here.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're here. Thank you. All right, our next business is Order 2425-12, the addition of
We
private...
have to vote on
Don't we have to
it.
vote on that? Yeah. I was-
Sorry,
He's trying to get us through this agenda,
Yeah,
folks, yeah.
it was, I just thought it was a foregone conclusion, I guess. Anyways, yes, my apologies. Anne,
Yes.
Krista,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Now, I can go back to what I was doing before. Order number 2425-12, the addition of private solar energy system, PSES performance standards to the zoning ordinance. Be it ordained that the Town Council of the Town of Gray, Maine, and council assembled to amend the Town of Gray zoning ordinance, Chapter 402, to add private solar energy system performance standards 402.6.12 and associated amendments, and to amend the Commercial Solar Energy Systems Overlay District 402.8.10 to allow animal grazing. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion?
Mike?
Second.
Motion Mike, second Krista. Do you want to,
Sure, I'll just quickly introduce the item. So we've talked about this a number of times here. We had,
Yep.
I think, a couple of workshops before it was ultimately referred to the planning board. But our town planner, Kristen Mazinski, has done all the heavy lifting on this and has worked this with the feedback from the town council. And I think this wasn't unanimously recommended by the planning board. Was it unanimously?
The planning board was supportive. I have their comments if you want. I can.
Yeah, so I think the planning board supported this. So one thing I want to underscore is, should there be any changes to this ordinance as proposed, it would have to go back to the planning board
Yep.
for reconsideration.
yep,
And that's all I had, and Kristen's here to add any more things you might have to ask about it.
Kristen, did you want to say anything before we?
Sure, I just figured you might, from the statutory public hearing with the planning board, you can fill them in on as well, but the comment we had was mostly from the chairman. He felt the 30-foot setback was too much in the front and 10 was too little from the side. That was the only comment directly related to the language before you tonight. The others had responded only to some public comment from the Gray Water District. They had raised some concerns about pollution in the wellhead districts and the BD1. My understanding is that they've responded further and we're looking only for restrictions in the wellhead 1 at this point, but the planning board did not share their concerns regarding pollution from actual panels on site. That was the input from the board as a whole. And yep, the summary is basically with you, and Mike's gone over that, so if you have questions, happy to answer.
Any questions or thoughts?
I just had a question around the piece where we were looking for some opportunities for flexibility for anybody who might need to reduce that front setback, and we had proposed maybe using the staff review committee, and it looks like our attorney has advised that the zoning board of appeals would be the only way to amend that. I guess that gives me pause, because I also had some hesitation with the 30-foot setback and really wanted that flexibility baked in order, because the whole point of a solar panel is to attract the sun, and there's just some properties that a 30-foot setback is not going to achieve that, and I don't want to limit homeowners from accessing that as a resource for their property. So, yeah, so I guess that's where I'm a little stuck, because it feels really inflexible to have people need to go before the zoning board and go through that process in order to get a reduction, so.
Yep, yeah, the feedback, I did bring that question on your behalf to the town attorney, and it's a dimensional standard, and those have to go to zoning board of appeals. We were looking for an alternative approach, but legally that's where it lands. So they could certainly go to ZBA and seek a variance if it's a particular hardship with their property, where it needs to be closer. Keep in mind too that the 30-foot is a minimum, and in many districts, as it sits currently, it would be 50.
Right.
Because part of our understanding of the charge was that this was to protect aesthetics in the town and not have particularly large solar panels right near the road, and visible from the road and visible to abutters. So that was the approach taken here.
Yes, yeah, I'm not disagreeing with your approach. It's just, I don't know if 30 feet, I know the chairman of the planning board had the same concern. I don't know if 30 feet is too much, I guess.
Any other thoughts or questions?
Just to confirm, any changes at this point would need to send this back to planning board, right?
Yeah.
It seems like we talked about that 30-foot setback and sort of arrived at that as a compromise, and.
Well, it was a compromise based on the fact that people would potentially have the ability to appeal or get a change without having to go to the zoning board.
Oh, right, I see. We thought that we were could go to staff review or something, yeah.
But I might be in the minority, so if other folks are comfortable with keeping the 30-foot setback, we can certainly move forward.
And this was, if I remember correctly, which area was this again, the 30-foot setback?
It was the village, I believe.
The village, right? Just
And
the
then-
village?
So this is the front setback.
Okay.
The minimum lot line and the setback in the front. It's 50 in RA, Lake, medium density, BD1. It's 25 in BD2, 10 in commercial, 10 in village center, 0 in village center proper, 25 in BT1 and 2, and 50 in the wellheads.
But the ones that were lower than 30 would need to meet the 30 foot
Correct.
minimum.
So all the ones that are 50 would need to remain at 50, and the ones that are less than 30 would be a minimum of 30, the way it's written now,
Right.
for the front setback.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't agree with a 0 foot setback. That would not be acceptable in the village especially, but.
I don't have strong feelings about the setback myself. I have another question, but I want to wait till we sort of reach some consensus here. Are people okay with the current setbacks as they currently are, or do we want to send this back to planning board?
No, I don't think anybody wants to send it back to planning
Well, no.
board. I wouldn't say it that way, but I
Support-
want.
is there support for something?
I think my concern is the same as yours, as far as, if they do, but it still can get passed though, if they go to ZBA, right? So there is an option to go do that.
It's not a guarantee.
Right, it's not a
Well,
guarantee.
nothing in life's a guarantee, right?
But there's also,
There's a big difference between writing it into the ordinance and depending on
Yeah.
a ruling
but
from
there's an
CBA.
expense involved in having an application.
There is
from
an
the zoning
expense to
board
go to
also,
ZBA,
like, yeah, so, I don't know.
Plus, the ZBA has to apply a set of rules given to them by the state that, that are somewhat inflexible. I mean, they just aren't designed to make it easy to approve applications, let's put it that way.
Yes, Mike.
If I may just briefly explain that, so in the case of the ZBA, people who have setbacks for things to build a garage or a deck, it's just like this, so they would make that same application.
Okay.
I don't know off the top of my head what the application fee is, but it's pretty straightforward, and the code enforcement officer they're required to deny the application, but they'll work with the person to say, hey, you can apply for a variance to go to the board, explain your hardship. If you say the reason I need this setback said to be 25 or 20 instead of 30, and they can explain it. And with variances, there is a little bit more flexibility on the board's behalf versus appeals of the code enforcement officer's decision. There's more criteria to follow in that case. So I think in Kristen's consultation with legal, they advise that that's the appropriate mechanism, because again, that's what people do in regards to garages and decks and things of that nature. If they need flexibility and there's really no major disruption to like their neighbor, they can get the neighbors to support the variance and things like that. So then that way it gives the board more flexibility. Hope that maybe helped a little bit.
My only question is, when we talk about the attorney saying this, do we have this in writing so
Yes.
that?
Yeah, they provided us a written
we
legal
do? Okay.
opinion.
I just want to be able to back it up, you know what I mean, in case someone, and what were you thinking, Kristen, like 20 feet, or is it,
Well, it's more that each property is different and the angle of the sun is different, and I just wanted to leave people the flexibility to make a decision about where they need to place this without, certainly I think aesthetics are important, which is why we're addressing it here, but I think just the nature of solar panels and needing to get them in a precise location, I just feel like setting a specific setback isn't going to work for probably a lot of people, but maybe that's where we need to start, and if we're getting a lot of variance requests, maybe we need to revisit it. I certainly don't want people installing, like I said, a 0 foot setback in the village like that, which is why we need to address this, but.
Sorry, I'm looking for the fee schedule now. I don't see the newest one. It was $300, but I think it's higher than that now. I thought it was 500,
I thought it was more than that, yeah.
but I'm not 100% sure. So there is a, definite,
It's a significant,
significant expense going to ZBA.
I mean, Kristen, what are the, I know other towns are just adopting these standards themselves. There's not like really a set standard, but what does a 30-foot setback look like for a solar panel against the building? Would it be at the back of the building? Would it be typically,
I had dummied up what it would look like with a 50-foot setback in like Gray Park.
Yeah.
And that put them in the backyards.
Right.
So 50-foot would be in the backyard for those homes, just as an example.
Does Gray Park, would that fall into the 50-foot setback area, or would that?
Those are village center, maybe village center proper. I'd have to pull out the zoning map,
Okay.
but they would normally be a 10 or 0
Okay.
for minimum lot
So
line
then they would
setback.
probably be the 30-foot.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
but when I had used them as an example because they're small lots.
Sure.
And that would put them in the backyard. So
Okay.
you would not have front yard ground-mounted solar panels. And the ground-mounted, from what I understand, and what Tammy had mentioned as well, our code officer, is that they're not that popular.
No,
Most
they're-
people are putting them on the roof.
Right.
So the ground-mounted is really, all right, my understanding of trying to put this together was to avoid the situations like the pictures that
Yeah.
I shared with you when we did the workshop with
Yeah.
the 35-foot high giant panels right in front that are part of your cityscape effectively.
Right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, 50 would put it all the way back. Doing a 30 there, I think you could probably still get it in your front yard.
Okay.
But there would still be that path with the ZBA if there's something that's difficult about your property to get a change to it.
Okay. Well, maybe we just start with a 30. I mean, that's not
Yeah.
that's not quite as bad as I was envisioning, just visualizing that property in the 30-foot. And I mean, if you're noticing that there's, a lot of issues with people, like you said, they're not the most popular, but if it arises that it's becoming an issue for people, maybe we would just need to revisit it at that time.
So you're okay with the status
Yeah,
quo then? Okay,
yeah.
that's all right. No,
I
that's,
just worked through it, sorry.
no,
That
that's,
was helpful. I'm
that's,
glad you did, yeah.
there's absolutely nothing to apologize for.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I've got one of my own, but let someone go first. The communication from the Gray Water District and their concern about solar panels and batteries in the wellhead areas. I know batteries are not, that's not what we're discussing here, but was there any conversation, Michael, about their input? They're concerned. I've seen inconclusive information or conflicting information, I guess, about the concern for solar panels in the wellhead. There are panels that are made with the lead and cadmium. There are panels that aren't made with those substances that have fewer heavy metals in them. It seems prudent to me to be cautious about the wellhead. When we did the original solar overlay for the first commercial solar farm, we made, real intent to make sure that it stayed outside the wellhead 1. And wellhead 1 does go in across the turnpike and into that lot. So it did restrict the size of that a little bit, not by much, but a little bit. So I don't know where we're at with that.
Yeah, so we hadn't considered any of the suggestions because we don't currently regulate the placement of roof solar panels either. So if we were going to get into the business of regulating those, if they're concerned about the runoff from the solar panels, we would be in the business of regulating ones that people put on their roofs. These are just simply for personal energy systems that are off.
These do include roof mounted.
But as far as the wellheads are concerned,
I don't know if they were clear about whether they were only concerned about ground mounted or roof mounted.
no. But so for the and the wellheads are concerned, the water runoff that's coming from the roof and things of that nature. They're concerned about what's going to go into just based on what I'm reading from what they suggested. They're concerned about what's going to go into the ground.
Right.
And so, and I think they asked that there be that they require documentation that proposed panels are PFAS free.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about solar panels, and I don't think we do either, that we could make that commitment here. So again, if the water district items are something the council would want to consider, then it would be recommended that the council send this back to the planning board to further consider the water district's recommendations, if that's the wishes of the council.
I mean, I hate to do it, to be honest with you, but I do feel pretty strongly that we want to protect the watershed. And if there are, for instance, the state law requires any oil storage tank, a residential oil storage tank that's in the wellhead to be double walled. So that's not required anywhere else, but it is required in the building codes for the wellhead. I don't know enough to know whether or not this is a problem, but I am sensitive to the fact that I think we want to be careful with the wellhead. And if there's an opportunity to assure or limit the likelihood that there would be a problem, I think that's important for us to do. It's inconvenient. I don't like the fact that we're having this discussion when we're having the final reading, but sometimes that's the way this works out.
Well, it's the first reading
Well,
here, right?
it is the
Yeah.
first reading, but
Yeah.
we'd still have to start over again,
Yeah,
I
we
guess
would
is
have
my
to start
point,
again. Yeah.
to be clearer. Not my first choice, but yes, Mike.
Okay, so all we'd really be doing though, if we decide to go back, is asking to put in that there's no PFAS in the panels, right? Isn't that really what we're asking
I
here? or-
don't think we know enough yet, to be quite honest
Well,
with you.
the email we received from the water districts requesting 3 changes. One of them was to require documentation that there's no PFAS in the panels,
Yeah.
which I think that's fairly easy to accommodate, because it would be coming from whoever's installing them, I would assume. That
But we don't know if that's even practical. We don't know if there's no PFAS in the panels.
Oh, I see.
We don't know that about panels.
Okay.
So we'd have to get an industry expert to potentially speak to that.
Okay.
I mean, I've just been sitting here doing some Googling about this issue, and I mean, I think the consensus seems to be that the possible water pollution from solar panels is minuscule compared to the water pollution resulting from fossil fuels, or, you know, or the.
Of course, that's true, but do we want to increase it just because
But and I think that, you know, the bypass and salt on the bypass and on the turnpike is probably a greater contaminant risk to the aquifers than the solar panels. It doesn't, I mean, I'm not an expert on this by any means. I've just been sort of scrolling through comments, but I mean, did the water district provide any data or studies on?
they provided some guidance today that, to be quite honest with you, is later this afternoon, and I haven't had a chance to read it.
Yeah, there's a document from the CDC that they provided from 2023. The one thing, again, we could monitor, you know, solar's been allowed already, and we could monitor if any applications come in, and if there's a barrage of applications that come in for the wellhead protection zone, and we're concerned, then we could come back to the council and ask either for a moratorium or ask the council to amend the ordinance if there's a lot of interest in that.
I didn't think we had a private, isn't this new for the private solar installations?
No, they're right now, they're not regulated.
Correct. Right.
This is to regulate them.
Right, correct, yeah.
So they could be happening now in this protection
Yeah.
zone.
But if we added this protection for wellhead 1, it would limit, I believe, not only ground-mounted solar for residential use, but also rooftop solar for people who live in
Right.
those zones.
Right.
Yeah.
And
We don't regulate fertilizer people spray on their lawns
Right.
in those zones, so why would we be regulating solar panels? I don't know.
well, we regulate a lot of other things that happen within the wellhead zones as far as septic and those kinds of things. It does have an impact on people as far as building codes are concerned. You know, I'm not posing as an expert here, but
No, I know.
I do want to do due diligence to make sure that we don't add something to the.
I guess
and I'm a fan of solar. That's not the issue for me either. But
I guess I just don't know what what is the planning board going to add to this conversation? Is that the right, like, they're probably not going to know any more about, PFAS runoff on solar
No,
panels
I
than
think
we
to
do.
Michael's point, we would have to seek some other information.
Right.
And the problem is this, is, as Ann did, I've looked it up in every article. One says it is highly, everyone sprayed with PFAS, and the next one says it's not. Yeah, I don't know the right answer here, because it says most newer ones do not have PFAS. They're using a substitute, but all the components, batteries, everything else has it. So, I don't know. I am concerned with it at the wellhead, but I don't know if we should at least table it and do a little bit more research. Is it going to really hurt? Does this have to be passed tonight?
No, but if we make any substantive changes to it, we have to start the process over.
I'm not saying we make any changes. I
Yeah.
suggest we just table it and just, let's spend a little bit of time researching it before we make a decision. And maybe we don't find anything else out, but I'd hate to pass something and then find out a month later that we made a big mistake for not doing a little bit more research, that's all.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I don't want to, I guess I also want the planning board, listen to me, the water district to think that we're, taking their concerns seriously. I mean, we are, so
Yeah.
we're having this conversation now, so I think that proves the point. But I don't know enough personally to make the decision. I guess how practical is it, Michael, for us to table this now and to seek some sort of,
I think if the council's gonna consider the potential changes that, based on the water district concerns, I think the best thing would be to do is to refer it back to the planning board to consider changes based on the water district concerns. And then we can go back to the planning board with the information because none of this was presented to the planning board.
No, they haven't seen it.
Yeah, this stuff that they presented.
Yep.
This afternoon, so. I'm not sure when they first knew about this, but we've been talking about this for quite a while.
Yeah,
so.
it's always disappointing when we get to this part in the process and that we have to back the bus up, I agree. But even though it's inconvenient.
Didn't you say something about glacial movement? Yeah, let's just do it right.
Don't want it to come true.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so if the council wants to consider these standards, then I would just say that someone make a motion to refer it back to the planning board to consider the standards as recommended by the water district, and if, based on the information that we report to the planning board, if they want to make those changes and recommend those changes to the council, then they can be incorporated.
What are people thinking?
I mean, I'll just go on record as saying that I'm fine with PFAS documentation if that's something that's even possible in the industry. I don't know, but these other pieces about not allowing solar panels in the wellhead, for residential use, I'm not comfortable with those.
Yeah.
So
Well, again, I'm not posing as an expert here, but
Yeah.
there are a variety of different kinds of solar panels out there that you can identify from manufacturer to manufacturer, and some of them do have some of the heavy metals in them, the older ones specifically, but there are newer ones, and it seems that, if we find that there is a standard, we can identify, what that is pretty concretely and say, that it has to be a panel like X, or that doesn't contain X. It feels like we could be pretty clear about that.
yeah, if that's, maybe we need to explore that, if that's even a possibility. And
Yeah.
if it is, then maybe we could regulate the type. But I'm not okay with just completely excluding people's opportunities to install these.
No.
I'm with you just for the PFAS, that's all I'm
Yeah.
looking at.
I don't even think we should necessarily exclude batteries, though we're not talking about batteries. You may want to take extra precautions in certain areas, like they do with heating oil, but I'm not looking to ban them. So I think probably the easiest thing then, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, would be to just vote this down and then take a new amendment to send it back to the planning board?
No, I don't think you'd want to vote it down. I think you'd want to, if the council settled on amending it with the PFAS requirement,
Yeah.
then someone make a motion to amend that, and then the item, then you would table the item.
And it would go back
When
to-
it goes back to the planning board,
Okay.
and it stays on the council as unfinished business, and when the planning board reviews that,
We pick it up.
you pick it up again. And so basically, but what we're gonna have to research is, one, whether or not putting that type of language is legal.
Right.
And whether or not it's physically possible
To identify.
to identify. So
Sure.
if that's what we report to the planning board, that, hey, it's either not legal or the industry has told us they can't provide that documentation, then they'll have to bring it back to the council with that report, and
We'll just
you
have to
guys
make a decision.
decide whether you want to do it or not.
Right, and I would make sure we share this, this feedback from the water district with the planning board also, just, yeah.
Yeah, which we can do at the
Yeah.
next meeting.
Right.
So I'll make an amendment to, how do I word this? What's the best way to say
I'd
it?
just say to add a requirement that, that documentation be provided that proposed panels are PFAS-free if located within wellhead 1.
No.
You think something otherwise?
Well, I was just thinking something a little bit broader than just PFAS, because there are other, like I said, heavy metals in them that,
They only asked about PFAS.
They did.
well, I know, but I guess I'm afraid of having this happen again. And so if we just look at, it seems to me,
How about we just say toxic chemicals or?
yeah, or just,
I don't-
yeah, groundwater contamination from solar panels or something. Just, I think, if that's too broad, let me know.
It might be too broad.
Yeah,
think it
Because
is.
they're.
Okay.
the
They
panels-
gave a specific request, so you basically, amongst your discussion, you said, well, we're not interested in banning them in the wellhead. So you
No.
guys have concluded that.
Yes.
And then the next thing was to require that documentation that the proposed panels be PFAS-free. And they said it'd be added to section D, which, I don't know if that was specific to the wellhead, and I don't have
I
that
haven't,
page.
yeah, I haven't had a chance to look.
Required submittals for permitting. Oh, and so I think they're asking for that be added to all
Zones.
zones, because it's section D under permitting. So if you guys support that being added for the wellhead zone or for all zones.
Well, I don't know why, if PFAS being the issue they are, why would you allow
Anyway, yeah.
them anywhere? I mean, if we can identify a panel that we know doesn't contain.
So we're gonna put that kind of regulation on people who are trying to install solar panels around town? We're gonna say you can only install this one type of solar panel that,
We may say a panel that doesn't include, that's PFAS-free.
which is likely, if that even exists, probably one.
We don't know, yeah, I mean, but I guess I don't think contamination from solar panels, I mean, unless you have something that breaks the panel or, they do degrade over time, it's fair, and disposal is a big issue with solar panels, that's true. But why would you allow PFAS anywhere these days?
No, I know, it's just the amount of, PFAS is on everything.
It
I
is,
think
I
PFAS
don't-
is a huge problem. It's on everything we touch practically. It's on our clothing, it's on our, kitchen utensils, it's been spread over agricultural lands for decades now, which is really the major problem. I mean, I just think this is a very small contributor to any PFAS we're seeing. So
Yeah.
I don't know if placing this amount of regulation on people who are trying to do energy efficiency improvements on their home is worthwhile, in my opinion. But I understand the concern on PFAS. I share that concern. I don't think this is a big enough contributor, in my opinion.
Okay, fair enough, I mean, it's,
I just want to know. I'd like to know if it is a big
Then
enough
I think-
contributor. That's all.
I'm
just
fine
from
with
my-
I'm fine with exploring it. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that's just my initial, and I'll look into it too. I don't know
Yeah.
enough, but I, you
To
know.
Michael's point then, since, why don't we stick to what the Gray Water District has asked us to do
Yeah.
and concentrate on that?
And just, I did use artificial intelligence to ask about if PFAS
I've
are on
done that
solar
too.
panels. And they said that it is on some and it is on, not
Yeah.
on others.
Yeah.
And so to her point about do we want to regulate that? Because I'm sure the PFAS alternative may come at a different cost.
It might, but I guess in the well, so doesn't a double-walled oil tank if
Yeah.
you're in
Yeah.
the wellhead. So I guess I want to find out more information. If it's onerous, if it's all of a sudden it's $1 million a panel or something, that might change my point of view. But if it's the way of the world, and they're all going to be like that someday, I don't mind making that limitation. So, but I need more information. So we have an amendment for PFAS, right? That's what I'm hearing.
If somebody I guess I don't know if
I think
anyone's
we
made
have
that
that,
motion.
yeah.
Did I second? I don't know who seconded
You did.
I'm
So
comfortable with
Mike's
that.
agreed to look into the PFAS issue, and Krista's agreed. Is there any more discussion? And should we add as part of the motion that it's just part of the process that it'll go back to planning board? We don't have to add that to our motion, right?
Yeah, once there's an amendment, the statutory law
Takes
requires
over.
it to go back to the planning board.
Okay, very good.
And so the amendment, just to be clear, is to require documentation for that panels are PFAS-free in the wellhead zone, or in the whole, because they wanted it everywhere.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Ann, are you for or against all the zones, or just, let's get a sense of what people are?
I mean, I'm supportive of looking into the PFAS, but I think it's of particular importance of the wellhead. I wouldn't necessarily put it
Okay,
across
very
all the
good.
zones.
And how about yourself?
We gotta go back and do the research, so I think if we find out that it's a ton, no matter where, I don't want it anyways, but, I think we're just going back to find out a little bit more about it, that's where I'm at.
So what do you need for us for an amendment?
I need to know what you want, what the council collectively wants to do.
We want to understand the impact of PFAS on solar panels and groundwater.
Then maybe
and
rather
what-
than return it to the planning board, you
Right.
table the issue and we invite a solar panel expert to come to the next town council meeting. And then you decide whether or not you want to amend
Yeah, that's an acceptable solution
amend
too.
the ordinance at that time to send it back to the planning board, or if they tell you that PFAS is going to cause a lot of problems and you guys collectively decide you don't want to regulate PFAS, then you can decide to move it
I
forward.
think you've come up with an even better idea.
Okay?
Thank you.
So we'll do this one more time. Will you amend it to table?
Or just
No,
make a
just-
Just to
table.
make a
Motion
motion
to-
to table?
I made a motion table.
I'll second.
All right, is there any further discussion?
No.
Let's vote. Ann,
Yes,
Krista,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and I am also a yes.
Lord.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
Kristen.
you, Kristen.
So we have no further business until we get to our executive session. The Greytown Council will enter, can I have a motion for the Greytown Council to enter?
There's just the second public comment.
Comment.
Is there anyone here for public comment? Yes, yes, please. No one can hear you if you're not at the podium.
Judy Semino, Arlington Court. My comment is the water is very valuable, and those chemicals are forever. That's why they call them that. And I think it is very important to find out what the repercussions of that is, because once you do it and it contaminates the water, we're going to be in a really lot of trouble here. So I think the water is very valuable, and I think maybe you should have the water district in here when the panel guys are here.
That's a very
And let
good
them
idea.
come in here and
Invite
stand
them.
in here and kind of like figure out what's going to be the best solution for
Yeah.
that, so, thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion.
Thank you, Judy.
Anyone else for public comment? All right.
Motion to adjourn?
Excuse me?
Do I make a motion to adjourn?
Nope.
No, all right.
But you can make a motion for the Greytown Council to enter into an executive session under MRSA Title I, Chapter 13, Section 405, 6A, to discuss personnel matters. There will be no decision following this executive session, and the council will adjourn from the executive session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Ann?
Yes.
Krista?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes. Thank you very much, everyone.